So today I'm back on Jacob's Music and Sound model N350 Master Station repair because the other day the big yellow DHL van pulled up in front of the shop and delivered parts from our overseas supplier that I need to fix his unit. So when we last left off in the last video, I showed you components that needed to be replaced, and I talked about how it was difficult or impossible or not reasonably priced to buy them from some of the suppliers that we use. So I went to our trusted overseas supplier and bought a whole bunch of them. Oh no, they fell on the floor. All the electrons fell on the mat. Anyway, because they were much more reasonably priced from our supplier, I was able to buy much larger quantities than I would have from other places. And in reality, from the day I ordered them to the day I got them, it was only 7 days, which is pretty good. DHL is pretty speedy. So we've got a pack of 100 transistors, 200 of a different kind. Now, I did round out the order. These are not for Jacobs, that's for other things that we repair. I did try to round out the order to get the shipping down to a more reasonable amount. That's for a different set that we work on also. But all the integrated circuits, these transistors, those integrated circuits, these integrated circuits, those transistors, those more integrated circuits, more transistors. This one I only got 20 because that was all that was available at the moment. Usually I try to buy everything in quantities of, like transistors, you buy them in quantities of 100 because that's where the best price is usually. So those 100 each of those, and more integrated circuits here. These are all brand new parts. You do have to be careful sometimes when you order online from some suppliers. They will have parts that are new and they will have parts that are used, and I never ever buy used parts. These are two of the microcontrollers that we talked about in the last video. These are the 013 versions. I have not been able to figure out the difference between, there are 013s, 014s, 015s, 16s, 17s, 18s, and Jacob says has 19s. Now, his is good as far as I know, but I wanted to buy two of these so I could try them in his set to see how they operate, because I can't find technical information about the differences of the different versions of it. So anyway, so we've got a big giant box of parts, and now I'm going to get to it. So I'll be back. I'm back. So some time has passed and Jacob's Music and Sound N350 has been completed. It was a reasonably challenging repair to do. When we left off last time, first part of this video, I was getting ready to replace the integrated circuits on the main board. I have a sample board here that's similar to his. This is one here. This is from an N350. It is slightly later than his. It's a better made board because it has silk screening with component designations and silks and solder mask, and it's just a better board all in all. But the parts that were replaced on his were this one over here, pass transistor here, a whole slew of diodes. Basically, it's a whole sack of parts. It's all this. And I know everybody likes it when I do this. But here are all the parts that were replaced in his N350. Some of these were replaced because of age. Some of these were replaced. I'm pretty certain this was a lightning damaged unit, and that wreaks all kinds of havoc. And that's one of the reasons why all of the integrated circuits were replaced, because There were at least 3 that were definitely bad. There were 2 that were questionable. But when you have lightning damage and you also have a whole slew of diodes and things that have failed, lightning does all kinds of random damage, and what you don't want is you don't want a chip that may appear to be okay today, but it's within a group of other chips that got blown up, and you leave it, this one that seems to be okay, and then a few weeks or a few months later it fails, and then the customer's back on the phone, hey, it doesn't work right, and then you got to have them send it back and do it again. It's already here, it's already taken apart. Cost of the parts, if you buy them right, aren't terribly expensive, and you're already working on the board, so let's just take care of it the first go around. So these were all the parts that were replaced. These get sent back so he can see what we did. Other things that were done to the set as sort of a general refurbishment, these are the controls here on the front of the board. That's these knobs down here. All of these pots were all cleaned because they were dirty, scratchy sounding. When you would turn them, it would make staticky noise. These seem to be fairly good quality. They have a lot of sort of internal resistance. When you turn them, they have what would be considered to be a quality feel to them. They don't seem loose or wonky. If you grab the shaft and you sort of wiggle it, it doesn't make noise on the system. They seem to be of good quality, so that means that they hold up and last well, but they still needed to be cleaned. 2 of them were very, very hard to turn, and once they were cleaned, they freed up some, so that makes it easier to use. The other thing that was done on it was these switches. So you got 3 here, 2 here, and 10 here, and these switches are these 3, these 2, and these 10 over here. So these are your input selector switches. You have auto on, off, and power on, and then you can switch between radio or tape input, and then for radio you can select AM, FM, or phono. So there are 2 auxiliary input jacks on the back of the unit, which are here and here. This one is tape, this one is phono. The third jack here, oh, and these are RCA jacks. These are not 3.5 millimeter jacks. This third one here on the end, it says record. That's like tape out, because the optional cassette player that they made is a player recorder, so you could actually record off the radio and put it on a cassette if you wanted to, and that's what that's. I don't think a lot of people did that, but that is an option. So that's these 3 switches. These are your intercom switches. Here you have door on and off, and listen and talk, and listen and talk, and you can hear the relays click when you operate the controls. And then these are your room control switches. These are 3 position switches, so when it's in the center position, that room number 1 would be off. When you switch it up to the top, it's in monitor, which would be like listen in or a baby monitor, and then bottom setting is radio and intercom. So these all were cleaned. To do these well, these again seem to be high quality switches, better quality than what you would typically expect in a residential home intercom system. The problem with them are, because of the way they're made, when they get dirty and over time with wear, they become very hard and stiff to flip up and down like that. And part of that is because it is a fairly large switch. You know, it encompasses, it's one switch is all of this. Inside there are 6-8 contacts per switch. When you move the lever, you're sliding the internal part of the switch. Basically, you're moving a lot of metal. It's plastic too, but the idea is you're moving a lot of surface up and down between the different contacts on the back of the switch. Here are the contacts on the back. And when they get dirty and when they get gummy and they get crud in them from being exposed to all kinds of things, they become harder and harder to move. The normal thing you would do is use some type of cleaner like Deoxit D5. That's what I would use. And you of course would spray them down into the openings of the switches, and then you work them back and forth to clean the contact surfaces up, because you cannot take these apart. It's much too risky. They're held together with these little bent over metal tabs. There's one on the top and one on the bottom on each switch. I don't recommend you start taking things like that apart, because if the little metal tabs break off, what are you going to do? There's no way to hold the switch back together, and you're never going to find switches like this anymore. You know, this set was designed sometime in the early 80s, and switches, you know, it's just not a possibility. So you can't risk it. It's not worth the risk for what you're doing. So you spray cleaner in it, and you work them back and forth, and that will help. But one of the things I noticed was they cleaned up, so the staticky and scratchy sounds went away, which is good. That's what you need. But also, they do still tend to be somewhat hard to move, because again, you're moving a lot of metal inside the switch. And I think normally when switches like this are manufactured, there's some type of lubricant that's put in there, some kind of, you know, we'll call it switch grease, even though that's not what it is. It would be sort of a dielectric jelly. It helps make a better contact between the contact surfaces, and it provides some lubrication. So what I used was something that I keep here. Let's see if I can find it real quick and show you. So this is another deoxit grease. This is deoxit. It's called fader grease. And fader controls are sliding volume controls. Like on this board, this is a sliding volume control here, slides back and forth. And when you clean something like this, it originally had something like this in there when it was manufactured, and that helps it slide smoothly. It also sort of gives it a nice feel. It adds a little resistance into the slide, so when you move the control, it feels nice, which is important. So I took a little bit of this, and I added a little bit inside each switch deliberately. And what I use is I have little plastic syringes, because adding fader grease is a normal thing. I have little syringes like this that you take the plunger out and you fill up with the fader grease, and then you can inject a little bit into each switch and sort of smear it around. You don't need a lot, you only need a little. Then you move the switch back and forth, and it helps distribute the fader grease. And now when you move the switches, they move nicely, and it seems to work pretty well. What you don't want is, you don't want it where the resistance of the switch is so great that you gotta like, and then finally it like busts loose and it moves down. You want it to be able to move freely. So all of these two and these 10 are all the same style. These two and this one in the middle, these are different style of switches. These are spring-loaded switches. See, you push them down and they pop back up. And so is this. This one's not spring-loaded, but it's like, this one is like these two without the spring. So I put some fader grease in those. Those are more like standard slide switches. But you know, if you're going to clean them all up and lubricate them all, let's just do them all at one time. So that was all done, and then it was all reassembled. So I have a pretty standard setup here. It's connected to my standard AM, FM shop antenna right there. It's being powered by the original transformer that Jacob sent with the equipment. It has its chime module plugged into it. The chime module board was refurbished also, and it's connected to one original, that belongs to me, inside remote station, and it's connected to a door speaker over there at the end of the workbench. So if we turn the radio on, that's very pleasant, isn't it? And you don't get copyright strikes for classical music usually. So that all works well. You have the manual tuning for the radio works, the auto tuning for the radio works. I preset the FM stations into the memory buttons, and then down here you have buttons to switch the display from the radio station frequency to the time. You can program the auto on time, Auto on is the top setting. If you do like this and you program the auto on time, you could have it turn on at 8 o'clock in the morning every day, and then it will do that. There's a sleep set, which is like a sleep timer, plays for so long then shuts off. Auto cancel, so you can put it on auto, or if it's on auto and it turns on automatically, you can auto off. And then memory and time set buttons. So memory is to program the 6 radio station buttons, and time is to set the clock. The clock setting is done by using the manual down and up buttons, because underneath it says down, and then it says minutes advance, and it says up, and it says hours advance. It seems kind of odd to me that they did down and up, where you would think it would be up and down, but maybe that's just the way I don't know why. And then you have minutes advance and hours advance, where you would think it would be hours and minutes, but it seems backwards to me, but what do I know? The chime module rings. It's an 8-note chime module, so it will ring 8 notes, 4 notes, 2 notes, or 1 note. You can have up to 4, count them, 4 different push buttons that ring differently. And if we do this, and that is a fairly classic sounding music and sound door chime. 4 notes, 2 notes, and a single note. And for those of you who do not know or are not sure, the reason that you have different rings are either personal preference, which one you like best to ring on your front door. Normally the 8 notes is your front door because, you know, it's the fanciest one, but you can have 4 different. So you might have front door, side door, rear door, and I don't know what the 4th one would be. How many people have 4 push buttons? Each door rings differently, so when someone comes, like when the milk delivery guy comes, maybe he comes to the side door and it only rings 2 notes, and you know that's where there is somebody. So that works out pretty well. This module is dated March 1st, 1990. That's when it was manufactured. Oh no, that's when the warranty expires. So this would have been manufactured, I think, a year before that. So it would have been 1989, which is when this set is from. Intercom works correctly. If we turn door on, it puts the door speaker over there into listen mode. And if we turn the intercom up a little bit and do this, you can hear the sounds from the door speaker. If you want to talk to the door speaker, you have to do door on and then talk. And you get all kinds of feedback. And then you can talk to the front door and then hear the reply, and talk to the front door and hear the reply. And then it's like, get off my front porch, or I'm calling the cops. So this is a 4-wire system. So the intercom works like walkie-talkies. You push and talk, and then the other person pushes and replies. So push to talk. Turn this up a little bit, because we like the feedback. And then talk here on the remote. So intercom works, and then the door, to talk to the front door from a remote, it's just like the master. You have to turn door on and hold it down, and then push talk to talk to the door, and so forth. So intercom all works fine. It was a good repair. The only thing, it's in very nice shape. I didn't do anything with the faceplate other than I reattached this black panel insert here. If you remember on the original video, it had come loose and was kind of bending and curling up, and I reattached that. I just put a couple little streaks of hot glue behind it and then held it down until the hot glue set up, and that seemed to work well. You don't want to do anything that might damage. This is very shiny and reflective, and you don't want anything to damage the backside because maybe it'll show through or something. It's in nice shape, much nicer than average for a set this old. One of the things that tends to happen with these is all of this gold plated is it's plastic with a gold plating on it, like the kind of plating that they do when you buy model kit cars and you have like little chrome bumpers and things. It's the same kind of thing as that. And all of these switches and knobs and these buttons, they're also all gold plated plastic, and it tends to tarnish. It's from oils in your fingers and stuff that gets on it, and it tends to tarnish the finish, and it becomes sort of pitted and dull looking, and there isn't a lot you can do about that. It's a very difficult situation, because if the gold wears off, the gold wears off. There isn't any real way to fix it. And you can get something like this This is a Krylon. It's a 18 karat gold leafing pen, which I keep on the workbench, and it's a paint pen basically like this. This is the very best that I've been able to find ever to touch up gold stuff. But if you were to touch it up on this here and there, it doesn't really match. It's not as shiny as this is. It's probably better than nothing in a lot of cases, but it's not really the same kind of finish. So if yours is in good shape, you're doing pretty well. That's pretty much it. So it was a good but somewhat challenging repair because of the amount of damage to the set. So it was not just lightning damage, but it was also a lot of just basically I'm old and tired age-related damage, which you have to take that into account when you're working on a set. You know, if this was made in 1989, it's almost 35 years old. That's pretty much it. So it's going to get wrapped up, and next week, today's Friday, and it'll get shipped back out probably on Monday or Tuesday, and Jacob can put it all back together, and he can finally, after several years, have a working system, and he'll have a doorbell again. I wonder how many push buttons he has. I don't know. Hope you found this interesting, and maybe for someone it will be helpful. If it is, give it a thumbs up on YouTube, because that helps us just a little bit. There'll be a banner right here that shows you how to subscribe. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell, and when you click on the bell, click on it to receive all notifications, and every time we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.